a lot more depends on fossil fuels than you might expect, like your medicine cabinet. No, not the plastic pill bottles. The pills themselves might be derived from crude oil. Indeed, one of our most commonly used drugs uses a component of crude oil as a starting material, and that drug is Tylenol, which is, by the way, safe and effective including during pregnancy, hence why it's commonly used. More than 15,000 metric tons are produced globally every year, which means a lot of petroleum goes into that needed, safe, and effective pain relief. Unless we didn't have to use oil. It is possible to recycle plastic and turn it into Tylenol. Not possible for us humans, though. We need a hand from a pretty unexpected place. Crude oil contains the starting chemicals needed for a bunch of things you might not think of, from shaving cream to paintbrushes, clothing to fertilizers, and acetaminophen, aka Tylenol, also called paracetamol outside the US. We'll just stick to calling it Tylenol for this video, though keep in mind we mean the substance, not the brand. See, Tylenol is made up of carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and hydrogen. But the thing about chemical synthesis is that you can't just pick out the elements you want and stick them together like building bricks. There are only certain chemical reactions that are physically possible. To build up a molecule with an oxygen here and a nitrogen there, you need the right conditions to achieve those reactions. You also need specific starting materials to undergo those reactions. Any old compound made of CNOH just won't do. Current production of Tylenol starts with a compound called benzene, isolated from crude oil. You do some fancy chemistry to add some extra chemical groups to the benzene and voila, Tylenol. Well, it requires some chemical processing and other ingredients, but that's more or less how it goes. Point is, a more environmentally friendly starting material would be great. And there are options, like a benzene-esque precursor found in trees. But how about starting with something we don't want, like used plastic? Before we learn how, we have to keep the lights on, so let's go to a quick break.
Thanks to our presidents of science, Harry Plumley, Charlie Stanley, and TJ Stein for supporting this SciShow video. These patrons of the show help us fund things like the move away from green screens and onto handcrafted sets like the stuff that we use for deep dives. And they help us pay the people who make those sets. Shout out Hiroka. Since that change, we've made videos on our Rocks box set with its dark academia aesthetic, our main set with its dynamic shapes and colors, and even on location in real labs where they conduct the studies we're talking about. And we can only level up like that with your help. So thank you to everyone who has the means and chooses to support these higher quality videos at patreon.com/scishow.
Plastic is something we have in excess, unlike crude oil. Kind of for the same reasons if you think about it. A 2017 paper estimated that there are 4,900 million metric tons of plastic in the environment, and we've kept adding to that since then. Many plastics are made from fossil fuels themselves, so they contain components that are benzene-derived, which is to say, possible Tylenol precursors. One type of plastic, polyethylene terephthalate, or PET, is a component of water bottles and polyester clothing, among other things. PET doesn't naturally degrade, so it can persist for centuries. Basically, we have a lot of it. Good start. But the million-dollar question is, how do we get from plastic to painkiller? Well, first, you break down the plastic polymers into monomers. Polymers are long chains of molecules strung together, and monomers are those basic building blocks. We have helpers to speed along step one. There's already research on microbes that can break down PET, turning plastic polymers into monomers. Plastic polymers aren't something bacteria would normally encounter, and those molecular bonds can be tough to break. Even so, there are several microbes with enzymes that can do the job. Once we have our PET monomers, the next trickier step is to build them up into Tylenol. In a study published in June 2025, a group of researchers found a way to convert PET monomers into an organic molecule called PABA in the presence of bacteria. PABA is an essential nutrient for these bacteria, and helpfully for us, an alternative starting material for Tylenol. E. coli need PABA to make folate, and they need folate for building DNA. Bacteria usually use other starting materials to make PABA, so in the study, the researchers engineered E. coli that were missing some of the steps they need in that process. So basically, these bacteria needed PABA to survive and couldn't make it the normal way. PET monomers were added to the media with bacteria along with various catalysts. The bacteria had to rely on PET being converted into PABA in order to survive, and life, as it does, found a way. This was a breakthrough. Remember we mentioned that there are constraints in synthetic chemistry? We have to work with the chemical reactions that are possible to go from starting materials to final product. It's like solving a puzzle where there are rules about legal moves. And in this case, scientists didn't know if there was a PET to PABA solution that was non-toxic to life. That's because in a lab, high heat or toxic materials would be required. But purely through this process of artificial evolution, the bacteria found the right conditions for what the researchers called a biocompatible loss and rearrangement. Biocompatible means compatible with life. And a Lawson rearrangement is a way of forming a specific carbon-nitrogen bond, a necessary step in converting the original chemical to PABA. The reaction was helped along by phosphates in the bacterial media. The researchers showed that the process was non-toxic to E. coli and enhanced by their own phosphate molecules too. Once you have PABA, a benzene derivative, the next step is turning that into Tylenol. Adding a couple of genes to the engineered E. coli enabled this conversion. An enzyme from a fungus converts PABA to a molecule called aminophenol, and an enzyme from another bacterium converts aminophenol to Tylenol. The overall yield from PET monomer to Tylenol was above 90%, but this process needs to be scaled up a lot to actually be practical. Baby steps. A possible long-term goal would be getting microbes to also do the initial step of breaking PET polymer down to PET monomers all in one pot. Bacteria to break down and bacteria to build up. Pretty impressive. Thanks, little guys. This is an example of bio-upcycling. Getting microbes to break down plastics, then using those pieces to create new, useful materials. The authors of the study point out that this pipeline from plastic to painkiller couldn't be achieved using chemical or biological synthesis alone. By engineering bacteria and using controlled conditions, there's a synergy of chemistry and biology. It'll take some R&D to make this cost-effective, but Tylenol isn't the only fossil fuel-derived drug out there. Maybe this proof of concept will set the stage for even more plastic bio-upcycling.